have quite an extraordinary guest to give us some reaction to what's going on in the United States more broadly. Lots and lots of topics to get to with Donald Trump's former vice president, Mike Pence, who joins us, I'm delighted to say, live in studio. A very good morning to you, Mr. Vice President. A real treat to have you here in person. In particular, you're in London for a couple of days.
I am, speaking at Oxford, Cambridge, Chatham House, but up in Newcastle.
I saw it over the weekend.
Week, so it's been a great trip.
And talking about conservatism and what it means today up in Newcastle, and we're going to get to that in a second. I just have to ask for your reaction, if I may, first of all, to that story overnight. Did you expect Donald Trump to U-turn on this topic and say all these Epstein files should be released?
Well, I was hopeful that the president would join those of us that have called for the full release of all the Epstein files. I believe a society can be judged by how it deals with its most vulnerable, the aged, the infirm, the unborn. But that also includes vulnerable young women. And my heart goes out to the women who were victimized by Epstein and his cohort. And I believe that it's altogether fitting that the Congress, now with the president's support, will be moving legislation to release all the Epstein files. And as the president actually said yesterday, I hope to be able, he said he's done nothing wrong. I hope we can move past this and begin to deal with some of the major issues challenging our country at home and abroad.
Clearly here, it is dethroned a prince, has toppled an ambassador to the U.S. Do you expect that to happen of high-profile U.S. figures?
Well, I think we have to let the cards fall where they may. There's no antiseptic like daylight. And I think now for years, not only victims that we've seen compellingly on the screen this morning, but also a chorus of leaders around the country have simply called for full transparency on these files. I did so last summer, said I know of no reason why all the Epstein files should not be released to the public. Let justice be served. Let those who are held to legal account be held to legal account, but also those that just simply should be subject to public scrutiny for their involvement with this really despicable person.
Just finally on this, I mean, President Trump has said he's got nothing to hide. Why do you think it's taken so long to back the full release? Do you think he's got something to hide?
Well, I can't account for it. I know the president has very strenuously denounced this matter as a hoax, but you'd have to talk to people a lot closer to him to know and understand that. I simply know of no reason from our time together in the White House why all these files should not be released.
Clearly, as you mentioned, you've been here for the last couple of days talking about conservatism. You have a new book coming out, What Conservatives Believe. It's not out yet, but am I right in saying that part of the premise is you think the right in America, the Republican Party as it's today, perhaps the MAGA movement, actually doesn't perfectly represent what you believe conservatism is?
Well, let me be clear. I'm very proud of the record of the Trump-Pence administration. As you alluded earlier, it didn't end the way I wanted it to, but I'll always believe that I did my duty, fulfilled my oath to uphold the Constitution and see to the peaceful transfer of power. But up until those fateful days in 2021, President Trump and I worked very closely. We advanced a conservative agenda, rebuild our military, cut taxes, reduce regulations, secured our border. We appointed conservatives to our courts at every level. And when I was running for president in the Republican primary a few years ago, I noted that in our party, and I know you've seen these fissures here in the UK as well, there was a movement afoot within the conservative movement that was departing from that traditional conservative agenda that's defined our party for 50 years in the United States, and following what I call the siren song of populism, unmoored to conservative principles. We've seen voices emerge that are embracing isolationism, not only with regard to Russia's unprovoked invasion in Ukraine, but even questioning our support for Israel. And, of course, the president's announcement of unilateral tariffs against friend and foe alike is really at odds with the approach that we took in our administration, which was to use the threat of tariffs to negotiate down trading barriers and open up free trade. I'm someone that believes in free trade with free nations. Conservatives have always believed that. So those are some of the fissures that we've seen, and the book that I've written will be out next year, entitled "What Conservatives Believe." I hope is a part of a debate taking place in the United States as to whether we're going to stay true to those principles that have always made our country strong and prosperous and free.
Do you think that the same applies here? I know that you did an event with the Conservative Party at the weekend. So do you think they would be better people to look after this view in the UK than Reform and Nigel Farage? Would Farage be a bad Prime Minister? Is that the implication?
Well, I can tell you that I don't believe in foreign interference in elections. So if an election is called in the UK, I'll let the people of this country sort it out. But I have great admiration for the Conservative Party in the United Kingdom. And I think it's extremely important, as I said in Newcastle last Friday, that conservatives in this country offer what Ronald Reagan used to call a choice, not an echo, that we offer a clear delineation between both the progressive left as well as the populist right. And I was honored to be able to speak to them.
They're not doing very well, though. I mean, the polls at the moment, forget last year's poor election result, the polls have them under 20%. What do they need to do?
Well, for us, the Republican Party, in my 20 years in public office, has gone through different seasons of popularity. What I have found is that the more clear you are on a commitment to a strong defense, to American leadership on the world stage, the more clear you are that you're here to cut taxes, reduce the size and scope of government, and the more clear you are on values. It's a point that I brought up in Newcastle, to stand without apology for the right to life or family, that it's those values that I think will provide a real foundation for our party to continue to prosper in America, but also for conservatives around the world to prosper in the West.
I'm sure, as you've seen from our coverage this morning and all over the weekend, that the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, today announcing much tougher policies on immigration. Some would say that the Labour Party's been dragged here. It wasn't perhaps their initial intention. Is it important today in the developed world to have a very tough stance on immigration to be a successful government?
Well, first off, a nation without borders is not a nation. And what we did in our administration, and I was pleased that the new Trump administration reenacted, was essentially put into place policies that have secured our border. I mean, we created what we negotiated to be the Remain in Mexico policy, where we saw asylum abuse, as you've apparently endured here in Great Britain. But what we did was we made people wait in Mexico while they applied for asylum in the United States, because what we had witnessed was people coming in, claiming asylum, and then disappearing into our country, in addition to people simply crossing the border illegally. So I think everything begins with border security. But reforming your asylum system in a way that cannot be exploited by those who would seek to come into the country illegally, or in our case, by cartels that engage in widespread, massive human trafficking and assist people in coming up through Mexico into our country. So, but for me, the principle was one where we negotiated and we required people to remain outside the country while we processed. And at the end of the day, by our third year, we had ascended. We had not only secured our border, but we had essentially ended asylum abuse for all intents and purposes.
Being vice president, I imagine, is not the easiest of jobs. You're powerful, but you have to play second fiddle. I imagine being vice president to Donald Trump is even harder than most. How good a job or bad a job is Vice President Vance doing, in your opinion?
Well, look, I think what the Trump-Vance administration has done in a broad range of areas is very admirable and welcome. I was very pleased not only that they put back into place the policies that secured the southern border and ended the worst crisis of illegal immigration in our country's history, but also managed to extend all of those Trump-Pence tax cuts that create a foundation for prosperity in our country, and will continue to. Beyond that, though, I would be hard for me to assess. The relationship between a president and a vice president is unique in each administration. And as I say to people, I pray for the president and his family often. I pray for the vice president and his family just as often.
Do you think he's the Republican nominee for 2028?
Well, I actually think that there's going to be a very fulsome debate, and it's going to be less about who will be the Republican nominee than what the Republican Party is all about. Because I honestly believe this division in our party today will ultimately be settled, not only in the 2026 elections, but of course in the presidential election in 2028. And for my part, I want to be a champion for those timeless conservative principles that have defined our party since the days of Ronald Reagan.
I'm sure you've seen that President Trump is suing the BBC for defamation. Do you think that's bluster? Do you think he means it? He'll see it through?
Well, clearly the BBC has recognized that the documentary they put together created deceptive impression and editing around the tragic events of January the 6th, dismissing some senior people. And I never assume President Trump is engaging in bluster, but my hope is that they'll be able to resolve the issues going forward.
Do you think that the Prime Minister should urge him to back down, or is it not an issue he should get involved with? Clearly, the BBC is state-owned. It is government-controlled and owned.
Well, I would leave that to the Prime Minister. But I do think, and I said this Friday night, that the relationship between the United States and the UK has, for the last 75 years, been a bulwark of freedom in the world. And whatever we can do to strengthen that special relationship going forward, working out issues and differences outside of the public domain, I think is in the interest not only of each of our countries, but also in the interest of freedom in the West.
And fair to say that President Trump does have a particular affection for us. Is that true?
Oh, I think my impression always was that both with regard to the royal family and now of late the King and of the United Kingdom, that President Trump has great admiration for the United Kingdom, and that's true of the overwhelming majority of the American people. I think people understand, forged in the fires of World War II, that the United States and the United Kingdom have a special relationship, and that relationship has made it possible for freedom around the world to prosper.
My final quick question, Mr. Vice President, is, you were in the thick of it, of course, on January the 6th, so you know sort of limits to which President Trump wants to push things more than most. This story pops up over here, and a lot of us over here don't know if it's absurd exaggeration or legitimate fear. Is there any chance of Trump 2028 or not?
Our Constitution is very clear that an individual may not seek the presidency or be elected to the presidency more than twice. And so I expect that you'll continue to hear the president make comments about the future and toy a bit with the people in your line of work. But at the end of the day...
That's what he's doing, though. That's interesting.
At the end of the day, I think we're going to have a very fulsome debate in our country. Again, I would say not just in the Republican Party now, not just in who we will select as our standard bearer, but what we will be about. I intend to be a champion of that traditional Reagan, Trump, Pence conservatism that defined our party for 50 years.
You're not wearing one of those Trump 2028 baseball caps that we see out and about. Mr. Vice President, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you, Will.
Great to see you.